Half a day and welcome to ESL Sheltered class. Today we're going to be learning a lesson on exclamatory and imperative sentences. Now today's goals are I can construct an exclamatory sentence, I can construct an imperative sentence, and I can identify an exclamatory and an imperative sentence. So let's talk about these vocabulary words. What is an exclamatory sentence? Now, an exclamatory sentence shows strong feeling or emotion. An exclamatory sentence can also be called an exclamation, and it always ends with an exclamation point. As you can see, most of the time, people are usually shouting whenever they say an exclamatory sentence. For example, "Oh no, I forgot my homework!" Usually, when we do forget our homework, we show or express a lot of emotion. Another example of an exclamatory sentence is, "Ouch! That hydro flask is heavy." If you've ever gotten hurt before, we don't really stay quiet about that. We usually yell and we express emotion, so that is an exclamatory sentence. Again, you see here it ends with an exclamation point. Now, what is an imperative sentence? An imperative sentence is a command, and it tells someone or maybe an animal to do something. Now, an imperative sentence, like I said, is a command and it ends with a period. For example, if your parent sees your room and it's pretty dirty, your parent or guardian would tell you, "Clean your room." And that is an imperative sentence. I know that in our last lesson with declarative sentences, it ends with a period. Now, there's a difference between an imperative sentence and a declarative sentence. In an imperative sentence, remember that it is a command, while a declarative sentence tells about something. So even though they both end with a period, it always depends on the purpose of that sentence. Let's look at another example of an imperative sentence. "Sit down, Marley." Now, in this sentence, I'm commanding my dog to sit down. Again, it ends with a period. Now, let's look at some examples of exclamatory sentences. Here's the first one. "I finished all of my work." All sentences should begin with a capital letter. However, in exclamatory sentences, it ends with an exclamation point. Another example of an exclamatory sentence is, "Look at that huge wave." Usually when we see something outside at the beach, we get excited. We would show great emotion. So looking at this sentence here, again, it begins with a capital letter and it ends with an exclamation point. Let's look at another example. "Woohoo! My things came in the mail." So again, this sentence is an exclamatory sentence. It is showing strong emotion and it ends with exclamation points. Now let's go on to imperative sentences. Again, imperative sentences are sentences that tell someone to do something, and it's also called a command. For example, this is an imperative sentence. "Please stay 6 feet away." This sentence is directed to someone to stay 6 feet away from you. Another imperative sentence is "wash your hands." Again, it starts with a capital letter and the end mark is a period. Another example of an imperative sentence or a command is "raise your hand." It begins with a capital letter and it ends with a period. Now let's try to identify if a sentence is an exclamatory sentence or an imperative sentence. Take this example. I'll read it out loud. Is this an imperative or exclamatory sentence? "Watch out for that car." Boys and girls, what kind of sentence is that? Think for a moment. If you said exclamatory, you got it correct. Good job. Let's try another example. Is this an imperative or an exclamatory sentence? Wash the dishes. Think for a moment. If you said imperative, you are on point. Good job, boys and girls. Let's try another example. Is this an imperative or exclamatory sentence? I wish COVID-19 was over. Think for a moment. If you said that this is an exclamatory sentence, you are correct. Let's try another example. Is this an imperative or exclamatory sentence? Please go to Payless and buy water. Think for a moment. If you said imperative, you are correct. Nice job. Now let's move on to our next goal. Our goal is to construct an exclamatory sentence and an imperative sentence. So let me show you some examples. Here's a picture of a woman, and as you can see here, there's trash on the floor. This is an example of an imperative sentence that I constructed. Pick up the trash on the floor. I started off with a capital letter and I ended with a period. Here's another example. This time I constructed an exclamatory sentence. Now, if we were to see a brown tree snake nearby, this is something I probably would say. There's a snake over there! Because who doesn't get a little freaked out by snakes? So I started off my sentence with a capital letter and I ended it with an exclamation point. Again, this exclamatory sentence shows strong emotion. Now it's your turn, boys and girls. I want you to construct an exclamatory sentence using this picture. Here's my example. Now, if you're at the beach and you saw that, it is not a good idea to be swimming there. So that's why I constructed this sentence. Again, you don't have to have the same exact sentence as I created, as long as you begin with a capital letter and your end mark is an exclamation point, then you have the right idea. Now let's try to construct an imperative sentence. Let's look at this picture. Think for a moment as to what your parent or guardian would say if they saw this laundry bin. Here's an example of an imperative sentence I constructed. Wash your clothes. I started off with a capital letter and I ended with a period. Now that we've finished our lesson, let's revisit our goals for today. Are you able to construct an exclamatory sentence? Are you able to construct an imperative sentence? Are you able to identify an exclamatory and an imperative sentence? Now let's move on to our assignments. Thanks for joining me in today's lesson. Take care, boys and girls.